"Stay away from that man, honey," a mother whispered harshly. Sarah sat quietly under the oak tree, her daughter Emma beside her. Sarah said nothing, she's simply offering half a sandwich to an elderly man with a gray beard and a worn jacket. What secret could this act of kindness unravel? Find out on Courageous Voices. The golden evening light wrapped around the three of them like a fragile blessing, then a low rumble rolled across the park. Helicopters appeared over the treetops. Breaking the peace, a high-ranking officer marched forward, stopped in front of the elderly man, and with a sharp salute said, "Sir, we've been searching for you for 15 years. Sundays had always been sacred for Sarah Bennett and her daughter Emma. While the world rushed on with its endless noise, Sarah fiercely guarded these few quiet hours each week, a small island of peace carved out just for the two of them. As a single mother and a third-grade teacher at Willow Creek Elementary, Sarah's days were usually packed with lesson plans, grading papers, and grocery lists scribbled in the margins of her planner. But Sundays were different. Sundays were for slowing down, for homemade sandwiches, for sharing laughter that didn't have to compete with the buzz of screens. That afternoon, the sun poured like honey across Riverside Park, bathing everything in a soft golden glow. A warm breeze danced through the oaks and the sound of distant children's laughter floated through the air. Sarah spread a faded blue blanket under their favorite old oak tree, a tree that had witnessed years of their giggles, whispered secrets, and spontaneous games of I Spy. Beside her, little Emma, 7 years old with hair the color of wheat in the sun, unpacked their lunch with solemn care, as if handling treasures: turkey sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, crisp apple slices, a jar of homemade lemonade, and 2 oatmeal cookies for later. It should have been just another ordinary Sunday. It almost was. As Sarah sliced open the sandwich halves, her gaze drifted across the park. That's when she saw him sitting alone on a splintered bench about 30 yards away. Was an elderly man. His gray beard was untamed, his jacket worn thin at the elbows, and his shoes dusted with the weary patina of someone who had walked too many lonely roads. He wasn't doing anything, just sitting there staring into the distance as if seeing something far beyond the horizon. In a park full of families, joggers, and laughter, he sat like a ghost. Nobody wanted to acknowledge. Sarah noticed the subtle ripple that followed him. Joggers veered off course to avoid passing too close. Parents tightened their grips on their children's hands. Conversations lowered to whispers as people threw cautious glances his way. The distance around him wasn't physical, it was emotional, a wide berth built of assumptions and fear. Emma noticed Tude tugging gently at her mother's sleeve. She asked in a small voice, "Mommy, why is that man all alone?" Sarah's heart clenched at the question. In a world that moved too fast to notice the broken, she could see the answer clearly, but instead of answering right away, she watched the man, the sag in his shoulders, the careful way he clutched a battered plastic water bottle like it was the only thing he owned. She smiled gently at her daughter. "I think maybe he's just waiting for someone to be kind," Sarah said softly, and in that single heartbeat, without thinking of judgmental stares or whispered warnings, Sarah decided today they would be that someone. Sarah folded a sandwich into a napkin while Emma, with the serenity only a child could have, chose the ripest apple slice and tucked it alongside it. Together, they approached the man who sat alone beneath the sprawling oak. Each step they took seemed to draw invisible lines of judgment from the surrounding parkgoers. Sarah felt the weight of their stares, sharp, disapproving, almost warning, but she kept walking, one foot in front of the other, shielding Emma slightly behind her, not out of fear, but out of something more fierce, defiance. As they neared, the man lifted his head, his eyes a stormy, piercing blue, locked onto Sarah's with a guarded, almost defensive look. He seemed to brace himself as if expecting harsh words or a demand to leave, but instead Sarah knelt carefully to his level and offered him the simple, humble bundle of food. "We have more than enough," she said, her voice calm, unwavering. "Would you like to join us?" The man blinked as if unsure he had heard correctly. His roughened hands hovered over the offering for a moment before he accepted it with surprising gentleness. Nodding once in silent gratitude, Sarah led him back toward their picnic blanket beneath the oak, where Emma sat cross-legged, swinging her legs and smiling up at him with the pure, unfiltered kindness only a child could offer. He lowered himself slowly onto the edge of the blanket, moving with a care that spoke of old injuries and older memories. No one said much at first. Sarah poured him a cup of lemonade and handed it over without ceremony. Emma, giggling, pointed out a ladybug crawling across the blanket, shattering the heaviness with innocent wonder around them. The atmosphere in the park thickened, murmurs rose. A woman at a nearby picnic table shook her head in visible disapproval. A father subtly pulled his children farther away, casting dark looks toward Sarah as if she had endangered her daughter by inviting a stranger to share their meal. Still, Sarah refused to meet their eyes. She focused instead on their guest, on the way he ate the sandwich with slow, deliberate bites, as if he hadn't been given food freely in a long, long time. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something deeper, exhaustion perhaps, or a lifetime of carrying burdens no one could see. Emma leaned toward Sarah and whispered, "Mommy, why does he look so sad?" Sarah swallowed hard. Maybe, she said softly, because sometimes it's been a very long time since anyone sat with him. They didn't press the man for his story, they didn't ask where he had come from or why he looked so lost, they simply were there, a mother, a daughter, and a man whose name they didn't yet know, sharing food, shade, and a tiny pocket of grace in a world too often unkind, and somewhere deep inside the silence between them, something fragile and beautiful began to stir. Can one act of kindness rewrite a forgotten story? Stay tuned to Courageous Voices to find out. For a while, it almost felt like the rest of the world didn't exist. Sarah, Emma, and the elderly man, still unnamed, shared their quiet corner of the park, insulated by the spreading arms of the old oak tree. The man ate slowly, savoring each bite, as if the sandwich was not just food, but something rarer, a reminder that he was still seen, still human. But peace, like anything fragile, was easily disturbed. Sarah noticed them first, the watchers, a woman sitting nearby, perched primly on her picnic blanket, angled her phone toward them under the guise of taking a selfie, but the lens was not pointed at herself, it was aimed squarely at Sarah's little group. The woman whispered to her husband loud enough that Sarah could catch fragments. Can you believe she's letting her kid near that? What kind of mother does that? Sarah's stomach twisted, but she said nothing. She simply refilled the man's cup with lemonade and handed him a cookie from their basket as if their simple kindness was shield enough against a world quick to judge. Other whispers followed. A jogger slowed his pace, openly staring. A group of teenagers snickered, one nudging another to look. Someone, Sarah wasn't sure who, snapped a photo, the telltale sound of a phone camera shutter slicing the air. She could feel the ripple spreading now, not just judgment, but something worse, mockery. In a society trained to turn pain into spectacle, to mistake compassion for foolishness, their small act of decency had somehow become a public curiosity. The elderly man noticed it, too. Sarah saw the subtle shift in his posture, the way his shoulders tensed, the way his eyes, once soft and uncertain, hardened again into a distant stare. He folded the remaining half of his sandwich carefully back into the napkin as if preparing to leave, to retreat back into invisibility. Emma, sensing the shift without understanding it, scooted closer to him and offered a bright, innocent smile. Would you like another cookie? She asked. The man hesitated just for a moment, and in that tiny hesitation, Sarah recognized a lifetime of wounds that had taught him not to trust kindness, to expect that it always came with strings attached, or worse, with hidden cruelty. Before he could stand, Sarah gently laid a hand on the corner of the blanket. You're welcome to stay as long as you like, she said softly. You don't have to leave because people don't understand. The man's weathered hands trembled slightly as he picked up the second cookie, holding it like something precious. Across the field, Sarah saw the woman with the phone laughing as she showed their picture to another couple. She could almost imagine the caption that would accompany it if it were posted online. Something cruel, something small-minded, but Sarah didn't care. She had made her choice, and sometimes she thought doing the right thing meant being willing to be misunderstood. The warm afternoon sun had begun its slow descent, stretching long, golden fingers across the grass. The peaceful rhythm of the park seemed to resume, but something unseen was already stirring beyond the horizon. Sarah was gathering the empty lemonade cups when she noticed it, a jogger passing by, slowing sharply as he caught sight of the elderly man sitting with them. The runner wore a faded Marine Corps t-shirt. Its once bold emblem softened from years of use. His eyes narrowed in recognition, his steps faltering. He looked again, harder, this time at the patch of worn fabric the old man clutched like a talisman. The jogger's face paled slightly. Without a word, he took off at a pace, urgent, cutting across the field and disappearing into the parking lot. Sarah blinked, unsettled. She glanced at the man beside her, still sitting quietly, his gaze never straying far from the tree lean, as if half expecting danger to appear at any moment. He shifted slightly, and for the first time, Sarah caught a clear glimpse of what he held, a tattered military patch, the stitching faded but unmistakable. 4th Marine Recon Task Force Echo. Her heart skipped a beat. The insignia seemed important, heavy with meaning, but Sarah wasn't versed enough in military matters to grasp its full weight. She smiled gently at him, keeping her voice casual. My father served in the Marines, too, she said softly. He never talked much about it. For a long moment, the old man said nothing. Then, with a voice rough from disuse, he murmured, I was there, and that I wasn't anymore. The words hung in the air between them, raw and cryptic, carrying a sorrow too deep for explanation. Sarah didn't press, she simply nodded, letting him know that she heard him, really heard him, even if she didn't understand the whole story. Meanwhile, across town, the jogger had already posted a hurried message to a private veterans group, possible citing Task Force Echo Patch, Riverside Park, Glendale. Unconfirmed but unmistakable. The photo, taken without their knowledge by the mocking bystander earlier, had already made its rounds on social media, first as a cruel joke, but among the closed circles of military men and women, the reaction was instant and electric, because if the jogger's hunch was correct, the man sitting quietly under an oak tree wasn't just a forgotten veteran, he was someone the military had been searching for over a decade. Someone whose story had never truly ended, and without even knowing it, Sarah and Emma had just brought a ghost back into the light. The distant rumble started as a low vibration beneath Sarah's feet, almost imperceptible against the rustle of leaves and the distant laughter of children, but within seconds, the sound grew into a powerful roar that swallowed all other noise. Emma looked up, eyes wide, as two Black Hawk helicopters emerged above the treetops, their rotors chopping the golden afternoon. Into swirling currents of wind and dust, Sarah instinctively pulled Emma close. The park, once a sanctuary of quiet picnics and playful squeals, transformed in an instant into a scene of military precision. The first helicopter dipped low and hovered over the open field, its downdraft bending tree branches and sending napkins and stray sandwiches soaring through the air like confetti. Families scattered in surprise, mothers called to frightened children, joggers skidded to a stop, craning their necks. Skyward, from the ramp of the second helicopter, four soldiers in full combat gear leapt onto the grass, landing in staggered formation. Their boots pounded the earth as they fanned out, weapons shouldered, scanning the surroundings with trained intensity. The golden light glinted off their helmets and the polished insignia on their chests, creating a stark contrast with the civilian world around them. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She recognized the emblem on their uniforms, Marine Special Operations Command. Before she even understood why it felt so familiar, beside her, Emma pressed her small hand into Sarah's side, trembling as she watched the soldiers move with purpose and urgency. Then came the officer. He emerged from the helicopter doorway alone, his dress uniform immaculate, metals sparkling in the sunlight. He strode forward with measured steps, face set in a mask of respectful determination. The soldiers parted to clear a path, their eyes fixed on the elderly man, still seated on the blanket where Sarah and Emma had placed him. As the officer approached, the world seemed to hold its breath. Parkgoers huddled behind picnic tables and benches, peeking out with a mixture of fear and awe. The officer stopped exactly 3 paces from the man, raised his right hand in a flawless salute, and spoke in a clear, resonant voice that carried across the field. "Colonel Matthew Grant, sir," he announced. "Permission to escort you home." Silence fell like a curtain. The man on the blanket, once invisible, once dismissed as a stray veteran, rose slowly to his feet. His weathered face, framed by that gray beard and worn jacket, seemed almost to glow with the flicker of recognition. He returned the salute with trembling precision, shoulders straightening as if years of burden lifted in that single moment. Sarah closed her eyes, tears pricking. In one extraordinary instant, her small act of kindness had triggered a chain of events echoing back through time, bringing a lost warrior once forgotten safely back into the fold of a grateful nation. The echoes of the past had finally found their voice. Sarah still sat on the faded blanket as the military officer approached her, his dress uniform immaculate against the late-day glow. Beside him, a uniformed chaplain carried a small presentation folder. Emma hovered close, her eyes wide. "Ma'am," the officer began, voice low and respectful, "I'm Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, U.S. Marine Special Operations Command. I want to personally thank you." He paused, glancing at the elderly man, Colonel Matthew Grant, who stood straight, shoulders squared. Now that his identity was known, your willingness to share a meal, to see past his scars and his silence, brought him here today. 10 years of searching through intelligence reports and cold trails couldn't do what your simple act of humanity did in 5 minutes. Sarah felt a flush of modest pride and disbelief. "I didn't do much," she managed. "We just shared lunch." Hayes shook his head. "That lane of kindness cuts deeper than any formal search." Colonel Grant had hidden himself so completely that we feared he had given up on this world. You reminded him he still belonged. The chaplain stepped forward and handed Sarah a letter of appreciation encased in a crisp Marine Corps certificate. Emma peered over her mother's shoulder at the embossed seal. Sarah's heart pounded as she read the words, "For exemplifying compassion and restoring dignity to a warrior lost to his own memories." Meanwhile, Colonel Grant accepted Hayes's arm. His eyes, once distant, held a glimmer of something neither pain nor guilt could extinguish, a trace of hope. "Sir," he whispered, "thank you for finding me." Hayes simply nodded. Over the next few hours, preparations began to guide Grant gently back into civilian life. 1. Medical evaluation and counseling. At a nearby VA clinic, Grant underwent a thorough physical and mental health assessment. He met a kindly psychologist who listened without judgment, allowing him to begin untangling a decade's worth of grief and survivor's guilt. 2. Administrative reintegration. Military personnel helped him update his benefits, reinstate his rank, and secure housing. A modest apartment, unfurnished intentionally, simple, awaited him, symbolizing both a fresh start and the humility he carried. 3. Private reunion ceremony. That evening, a small gathering was held under the same oak tree. A handful of fellow Marines, some home on leave, quietly saluted as Hayes presented Grant with his original reconnaissance patch, meticulously restored. The oak's branches bore witness to their subdued celebration. Laughter, tears, respectful nods. 4. Community outreach. Sarah and Emma were invited to a local veterans center the next morning where they helped serve breakfast to other older vets. Grant watched, silent but attentive, as people smiled and thanked Sarah again, reinforcing the ripple effect of her kindness. 5. First public appearance, within days. Grant agreed to speak at a private gathering of Task Force Echo families. His voice trembled at first, then grew steadier as he described the Sunday afternoon when two strangers sat with him under the oak. His gratitude was not only for rescue, but for rediscovery, a reminder that even ghosts can find their way home. By the end of the week, Colonel Matthew Grant had taken his first true steps back into the world he thought he'd lost, and for Sarah and Emma Bennett, the knowledge that an extra sandwich and a moment of compassion could heal a wounded warrior became a story they and their town would never forget. A week after Colonel Grant's quiet return, the town gathered again at Riverside Park, this time for a different kind of ceremony. Beneath the sprawling oak that had witnessed so much, a small crowd formed around a simple wooden bench. Its surface was smooth, freshly sanded, and stained a warm chestnut hue. On its backrest gleamed a bronze plaque engraved with 3 words, kindness. Bench. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes stepped forward and tapped the plaque respectfully. This bench, he announced, voice carrying across the hushed gathering, is dedicated to every small act of compassion that makes us human. May anyone who feels unseen find a place here. He nodded at Sarah and Emma Bennett, who stood side by side, their faces lit by late afternoon sun and quiet pride. Sarah reached down, tracing the letters with her fingertips, while Emma tucked a sprig of wildflowers into a crack in the bench's armrest. Around them, veterans, park staff, and neighbors applauded softly. A few wiped away tears, some from memory, others simply moved by the reminder that kindness can shift even the heaviest shadows. In the days that followed, the transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Joggers no longer skirted the bench at a cautious distance. Instead, they paused to tie shoelaces or catch their breath. Parents coaxed shy toddlers to climb onto its seat, and teenagers left finished iced coffees beside it for the next weary stranger. Local volunteers began to leave discreet baskets of snacks and water bottles beneath the oak, each labeled for anyone in need. A small bulletin board appeared nearby where people posted notes. Looking for a friend? Sit here, share a story, you matter. Even the mocking bystander who once photographed Sarah, Emma, and Grant returned one afternoon. He hesitated at the edge of the clearing, then walked over, eyes downcast. Without a word, he sat on the kindness bench and pressed a crumpled apology toward Sarah. She accepted it with a gentle nod and an invitation to sit beside him. At sunset, Grant himself often came back. He would rest his weathered frame on the bench, gaze up at the oak's twisting branches, and allow himself to feel seen rather than hidden. Sometimes Emma slipped him a cookie, and Sarah poured lemonade into a thermos for him to take home. Over time, Grant found himself smiling more easily. The park, once a place of whispered judgments, became a living testament to one mother's choice. Each person who sat on the kindness bench carried its quiet message into the world that every soul, ghost, veteran, stranger, child deserves a place, a moment of shared humanity beneath the shade of an old oak. A few days after the dedication of the kindness bench, Sarah discovered a plain envelope tucked into the crook of the oak tree's trunk. Its handwriting was tidy, but unfamiliar. Inside lay a single sheet of cream-colored stationery and nestled in a small cloth pouch, a delicate charm shaped like an oak leaf. Sarah unfolded the letter. Dear Sarah and Emma, I have spent the last 10 years believing I was completely alone, lost to the world and to myself. Your willingness to share half a sandwich in a moment of genuine kindness reminded me of who I once was, a Marine, a husband, a friend. In that simple act beneath the oak, you reawakened a sense of belonging I thought I'd forfeited forever. This oak leaf charm is a token of my deepest gratitude. May it serve as a reminder that small gestures can carry the weight of entire lifetimes. Because of you, I have begun to heal. Because of you, I am home again. With respect and thanks, always, Matthew Grant. Sarah and Emma exchanged a silent smile as Sarah opened the pouch. The oak leaf was carved in silver, its veins finely etched, an echo of the very tree under which their lives had intersected. The oak leaf symbolized strength and endurance, yet also gentleness and renewal. In gifting it, Colonel Grant transformed the tree's stoic presence into a living testament to compassion's power. Each line in the leaf's design mirrored the countless lives touched by kindness, the veterans who found community again, the bystanders who reconsidered their judgments, and the families drawn closer by a simple bench. From that day forward, Sarah wore the charm on a thin chain, and Emma tied a matching one around her wrist. Whenever they passed Riverside Park, they could look up at the oak and see not only its towering branches, but the ripple of hope it inspired, a quiet, enduring remembrance that one extra sandwich and an open heart can change everything. In today's rush of headlines and busy schedules, it's easy to overlook the quiet heroes among us. Whether it's the neighbor who shovels your walk, the barista who remembers your name, or the veteran sitting alone under an oak tree, our story reminds us that one extra sandwich, one open seat on a bench can be the spark that reconnects someone to community and hope. In a world that often measures success in clicks and likes, genuine human kindness still carries the greatest weight. Think about your own life. How many times have you hesitated to offer a smile, a greeting, or help because you feared you might intrude? What if that small gesture became the turning point in someone's day or even their life? In our modern American towns and suburbs, from church potlucks to neighborhood watch groups, there are countless opportunities to reach out, whether it's leaving an extra gallon of soup on a doorstep, volunteering at a local veteran center, or simply inviting a lonely friend to coffee. We can all find a kindness bench moment in our own communities. Now it's your turn. Have you ever witnessed or offered a small act of compassion that made a big difference? Do you think today's society still honors its forgotten heroes, or have we grown too distracted? Share your stories and thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences could inspire someone else to take that next brave step toward kindness. Thank you for listening to Sarah, Emma, and Colonel Grant's journey. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more touching tales, and click the notification bell so you never miss an episode on Courageous Voices. And remember, sometimes the simplest actions, an extra sandwich, a listening ear, a place at the table, are the ones that change everything. We'll see you next.